Right. Finally, we are working on the last bit of chapter 7 about trigonometric functions. And we are targeting the biggest piece in the chapter, which is about modeling. Now, a lot of students come to me and ask me, sir, how do we do modeling? When it comes to modeling, it applies to all kinds of modeling in maths. There are two big questions you can ask yourself. Obviously, there are more complicated things that you should be considering when it comes to modeling. But fundamentally, there are two problems you can ask yourself when it comes to modeling question. The first question is, how many variables are there? Or what are the variables? So what are the variables? Okay, in the equation. So what are the variables? That's the first question. And the second question you should be asking yourself is, which variable? So once you've asked yourself the first question, you have identified all the variables. Then the second question is, which variable does it relate? Does the information given, does the info given relate to? So in modeling, they give you information, and your task is to link them to the variable, one of their variables, and find out the other. Okay. Right. So today we'll look at modeling with trig functions in particular. Now, previously, you have learned how to write in r sine x plus minus alpha or r cos x plus minus alpha to find maximum or minimum. So if you forget about this, this is about chapter 7.5. I've broken into two lessons, 7.51 and 7.52. The first lesson is about breaking into how to rewrite them into r sine x plus minus alpha form, and point 2 is about finding maximum and minimum. If you forgot all of them, I suggest you go back and watch them again. Right, so without further ado, let's look at example. Example, the cabin pressure, P in pounds per square inch, PSI. We use this in vehicle tires as well, talk about the pressure. Per square inch PSI on an aeroplane at cruising altitude can be modeled by the equation P equals 11.5 minus 0.5 sine t minus 2. Now we see this equation here. So the question is, what are the variables in here? Right? So how many variables are there? In here, the first question is there are two variables. P and T are your variables. So make sure you read what does each variable stand for. Where T is the time in hours, so we know T is in hours, since the cruising altitude was first reached. So what is P again? P is the cabin pressure, sorry. And angles are measured in radians. So make sure you do underline lots of keywords and whatever feels important to you. Question A, state the maximum and minimum cabin pressure. So part A, P equal 11.5 minus 0.5 sine t minus 2. Now we've learned about maximum minimum. So we have learned about using a highlighter part, right? I think I used the highlighter. Sometimes I use a green box, sometimes I use highlight. I think I did use a highlight in my previous video. So this part, sine t minus 2, has a range of value between -1 to 1. Remember that. So if I want to find a maximum minimum, I can substitute this highlighted part by the value of 1 or -1 to work it out. So if you can do it on your head, you should know putting a -1 will give you a bigger value, because negative 0.5 times negative 0.5 times negative 1 will give you positive. So therefore, we'll sub in, so maximum P, so maximum P, maximum pressure equals 11.5 minus 0.5 times negative 1. Okay, so I'll substitute the yellow part with a -1. If you don't know what I'm trying to say, try to sub in 1 as well instead of -1 in the yellow bracket. You'll get a smaller value. So that will be the minimum value of P, which is actually what we need as well. We need maximum minimum. Anyway, maximum is 11.5 minus that 1, so that's 12 PSI. And the minimum P, okay, equals 11.5 minus 0.5 times 1. So I substitute 1 into highlighted part, which is 11 PSI. So the minimum is 11, maximum is 12. All right. Part B. Find a time after reaching cruising altitude that the cabin first reaches a maximum pressure. So part B. Now we know there are two variables in this question: the P, the pressure, and T, time. Now, part B, they want you to find the time. So, and that the cabin pressure first reaches a maximum pressure. So, to find time, then surely we must know P, because otherwise we won't be able to work out T. So the P given, that means the information given to you. So remember the first two questions. The second question, which variable does the information given relate to? This one reaches maximum pressure relates to P. So max pressure is 12. That means when P is 12. So that's the information given. That's how we can link it. So part B, we'll do that. So part B, when P equals 12, then we can solve it. 12 equals 11.5 minus 0.5 sine t minus 2. Or, okay, if you're a smarties, you might realize when does the maximum P occurs? It occurs when we let sine t minus 2 equals minus 1. So the second way is obviously quicker, but the first way is not any, it's not much slower. You see why. Take 11.5 left side becomes 0.5. 0.5 equals negative 0.5 sine t minus 2. Divide by negative 0.5 on the other side, you get negative 1 equals sine t minus 2. So you can see the same thing. Right, so we can solve it in here. So then we can solve it. So we can first of all do inverse sine of minus 1. So to do arcsine of minus 1, you have to use sine graph. When t is minus 1, that's when 3 pi over 2. Therefore, t equals 3 pi over 2, or t minus 2 equals to minus 3 pi over 2. But because of minus 2, we might also need to think about the previous answer in here, which is negative pi over 2. So, or negative pi over 2. So two values, basically using sort of similar to cast diagram, but it's not cast because with minus 1, the sine graph only touches the minus 1 every 360 degree. The reason we have to look into negative part of the graph is because of the minus 2. When you have minus 2, it means the graph has been moved to the right by 2. That means the original part that was in the negative now becomes positive. So what I'm trying to say is, remember that when let's say when t is between 0 and 2 pi, but when you have t minus 2, then it becomes minus 2 and 2 pi minus 2. So that means there might be some answers in a negative region. Okay, so when you see t minus 2, something minus something, then be careful with that. So when we add 2 to both answers, 3 pi over 2, 3 pi, where's my calculator? 3 pi over 2 plus 2 is 6.71. Make sure calculator radius, by the way. Negative pi over 2 plus 2 is 0.429. Now, we want to choose the one that is the smallest value. So therefore, actually, this is smaller. This is the answer, 0.429 hours. Right? And that's the answer. Part C, calculate cabin pressure after 5 hours. So again, P and T are your variables. You're given 5 hours, means that's T. So when T equals 5, so yeah, part C. When t equals 5. We use the same equation again, but this time we substitute t equals 5. So P equals 11.5 minus sine, minus 0.5 sine 5 minus 2. Plug in the calculator, you get P equals 11.4 psi. Part D. Find all the times for the first 8 hours of cruising that the cabin pressure will be exactly 11.3. Now, again, let me ask you a question. In this one, which variable are you finding? Find all the times, so you're finding t. Okay? But then if you read the question, you realize 8 hours. Isn't that t value? Well, why do I find t? Now, this 8 hours is a condition. That means there's a condition for you to compare your final answer, see what answer you can reject and what answer you can accept. So there's a condition. It's not something you can use in the calculation. Okay, so we can't use it. So whereas we're given P, which is 11.3, so we're going to use this value. So we're going to use this information. So when P equals 11.3, that's what we calculate. So part D, when P equals 11.3, So we sub in again, we do the whole thing again. P equal 11.3 equals 11.5 minus 0.5 sine t minus 2. We've used it so many times I can even remember in my head. So bring your 11.5 left side becomes negative 0.2 equals negative 5 sine t minus 2. Divide by negative 0.5, you should get 0.4. Positive 0.4 equals sine t minus 2. What we can do next is we can do inverse sine. So t minus 2 equals inverse sine of 0.4. So put in the calculator. Now we have to use cast diagram in here. Inverse of 0.4 is 0.411. Make sure you calculate radians. 0.411, the other value that sine is positive is on the sine region, which is 0.411 in here. So the two answers are t minus 2 equals 0.411, or the second value, which is in the sine quadrant, will be pi minus 0.411. So pi minus 0.411 is 2.73. So where does value come from? This is pi minus 0.411. Okay. Do we need more answers? We might need to, because now then the 8 hours come into play. The first 8 hours. So far we've got t equals 0.411 hours and 2.73 hours. That's way below than 8 hours. So I'll be thinking, are there more answers? Okay, that's what you should be thinking, because these two answers are quite far away from 8. So if I add 2 pi, okay, to both answers, so add 2 pi. So add 2 pi, 0.41. Why 2 pi? Because 2 pi is 360. So so you got 6.69, or 2.73 plus 2 pi, that's 9.01. So these are the 4 answers I've got so far. So I have to add 2, because t minus 2, wasn't it? So I have to add 2 to all the answers. So it'll be 2.411 or 4.73, and then 6.69 plus 2 is 8.69, which we can reject. So we don't need to do the 9.01. So actually, these two are the answers that we need. All right. Next one. Next one. Okay. And this is an exam question. We'll go through it together. Pi express 9 cos theta minus 2 sine theta is a minus, I believe. Yep. In the form of r cos theta plus alpha, where r greater than 0 and alpha between less than between 0 and pi over 2. Give the exact value of r and give the value of alpha to 4 decimal places. You must give it 4 decimal places. Now, question A and B, you should have learned this in 7.5. If you would like to, and I would highly recommend you to pause the video, have a go at the question. Okay, when you're ready for the answer, you can press play. So here are the answers. Question A, we know R equals Pythagoras of the 9 squared plus 2 squared, but here are the answers. Okay, so root 85, to work out alpha value, we set up 10 alpha equals the coefficient of matching one, which is in the denominator. So matching cos theta and cos, so 9 goes underneath. We ignore negative, so 2 on the top. So 10 alpha equals 2 over 9. So alpha equals 0.2187. Must be 4 decimal places. I have mentioned this. Okay. So therefore, I will write the question root 85 cos theta plus 0.2187. BI. State the maximum value. So we don't use the 9 cos theta minus 2 sine theta anymore. We use the root 85 cos theta plus 0.2187. To work out maximum, I replace the highlighted part as 1. So give me root 85. If I ask you a question, what's the minimum? Do you know the minimum? The minimum is when I substitute this to be minus 1. So root 85 times negative 1 will be negative root 85. That will be the minimum. But if I substitute 1, that will be the maximum. Right? Part B2, maximum occurs when we let the highlighted part equals 1, and then we solve it. And 6.06 is the first positive answer that we need. As I said, there's like a meal deal. First, change it into r cos theta plus alpha form, and then find a maximum minimum. Then the last part, like a drink or the snack, whichever you prefer, is the when does this maximum or minimum value occur or arise? Okay. There's all chapter 7.5, 1 and 2. Without this, you can't go through the rest of the question. If you can't do these basic 6-mark question, then there's no way you can achieve the next 6 marks. So ultimately, you'll be losing 12 marks. So yeah, don't be that person. So learn your 7.5, 1 and 2 knowledge. Right, next, Ruth. Okay, we've got a little Ruth that likes to, instead of going to the Ferris wheel, she likes to model it. Interesting person. Ruth models the height h above the ground of a passenger on the Ferris wheel by the equation. So h equal 10 minus 9 cos pi t over 5 plus 2 sin pi t over 5, where h is measured in meters and t is the time in minutes after the wheel starts turning. Calculate the maximum value of h predicted by this model and the value of t when this maximum first occurs. Give your answer to 2 decimal places. So quite a few things they're asking here. Right, one by one. First, well, there's a reason why they give you part A and part B, right? And let's see what are the common similarities and difference. Okay, again, answer the question. What are the similarities and what are the differences? Similarity are the 9 cos, 2 sin, right? But difference is the theta becomes pi to 5 and the sign changes from a minus to a positive. So what can we do? Now, with the sign, it's quite easy because you can see both sign changes from plus minus to minus and plus. It means if we can factorize this part out like this, put a big bracket, if we put a big bracket around it, then this becomes a minus. Okay, now these are drafts. So, and also theta turned into pi to 5. So first step, why don't we get to the sign first? Do the plastic surgery on the signs. So h equal 10 minus 9 cos pi t over 5 plus 2 sin pi t over 5. Now I can put a big bracket, factorize negative out, so it'll be 9 cos pi t over 5 minus 2 sin pi t over 5. Okay, now then we got rid of one differences. So now you can see it's completely matching with part A. So then what we can do is we can use our answer in part A and convert and rewrite this function here. This function now becomes root 85 cos theta on top right plus 0.2187. So what we know theta is pi t over 5. So h equal 10 minus, so root 85 cos theta plus not theta. We don't have theta in here. We're using pi t over 5 plus 0.2187. That's the first key skill in this modeling, trigonometry modeling question. The second skill, I guess, the first skill is learning to do part A and part B. And the next important step is to know how to rewrite it. Okay. Then what did they ask? Find the maximum value of h. So to find the maximum value of h, we have a similar question here. So this highlighted part has a value between -1 to 1. So we'll find the maximum value of h. So max h equals 10 minus root 85. Now think carefully, which number would you substitute in here to find the maximum? If you substitute 1, that will be 10 minus root 85. But if you substitute -1, it'll be 10 minus root 85 times -1, which minus makes a positive, so that will become bigger. So I'm going to put in the calculator, and in here you should get 19.22 meters. So now be careful with part C, there are 2 questions in one. Find the maximum, we've done that, but also we need to find the value of t when this occurs. So when does it occur? So max h occurs when the highlighted part, when cos pi t over 5 plus 0.2187 equals to -1. When we let that to be -1, that's when the maximum occurs. Okay, so you can see again, a combo. Okay, so So first of all, you arc cos or inverse cos on the other side. So we know inverse cos of -1, inverse cos of -1 is that one. So that's 90, that's 180 degree, 180 degree, 180 degrees pi. So pi t over 5 plus 0.2187 equals pi. Do we need to find the previous one? So some of you might be thinking, okay, do we need to find the previous negative answer? The answer is no, because if you look at this pi t over 5 plus 0.2187, the domain is only getting bigger. That means there's nothing negative involved in here. So we don't need the second one, right? So we don't need to find the previous answer. And do we need to find one more, the next one after the original, after the 360 degree? Well, you can, but that will be redundant because usually we only ask for we only look for the first positive answer. So then what we do is we take away pi, take away 0.2187. We make t a subject in here essentially. Is so if I t equals, so if I 0.2187 times by 5 divided by pi. Okay, make t a subject, put in a calculator, you should get 4.65 minutes. Okay, so that's how long it takes to reach the highest point, right? So next part, part D, determine the time for the Ferris wheel to complete 2 revolutions. This part is tricky. Now I want you to think of how does the 2 revolutions reveal the information, the variables that we have. So what does this information reveal? You can have a go. Of course, you can try the question. So here's the answer to this. Now, the answer lies in the graph of cos. Okay, so let me explain. Now, when we reach the -1, that's when t equals 4.65 minutes, right in here. So what it means is, if we find one more, the next answer in here, this will be 1 revolution. If we find one more answer in here, that's another revolution. So then that means if we can find a time at this point, the difference will be our answer. Okay, so the first revolution, so we reach the first point at pi. That means after 1 revolution, it will be 3 pi because at 2 pi. And then the second revolution will be at 5 pi. So part D. Okay, so part D. Right. So we're going to now you're going to write as many as detailed explanation as you want to on why do we where did it come from? Pi to 5 plus 0.2187 equals 5 pi. Yeah, I'll help you a little bit in here. So in here, so you might want to point that one out. So pi equals when so at pi that's the highest point. At 3 pi, highest point again, but after 1 revolution. So at 5 pi, it's highest point again, but it's after 2 revolutions. Right. So yep. So we'll solve this again. So to make t a subject, so t equals 5 pi minus 0.2187 times it by 5 divided by pi. So t equals to what is t equals to? So t equals to, let me minus 0.21. Okay. So let me put in a calculator. 5 pi minus 0.2187 times 5 divided by pi. That's 24.65. Okay. So that's 24.65. But don't forget the original time, which is 4.65 at the highest point. That means we start counting at the highest point. Now, if you struggle to what I'm trying to say in here, there's a Ferris wheel, right? It looks out, a fan looks at a basketball, whatever. Hey, it's a fan, right? So what we're trying to measure is when the Ferris wheel, okay, imagine that's you, okay, in here. We don't measure from this point. What we measure is we start measuring when you're here at the highest point. So when is it at the highest point? When t equals 4.65 minutes. Then from there, we measure 2 revolutions, 1 and then 2. So what you found is after 2 revolutions, t equals 24.65. So the time between, okay, so time taken for 2 revolutions equals to 24.65 minus 4.65, which is 20 minutes. And that's the answer. All right. Next one, practice. Okay. Pause the video, have a go at the question. Pi and puppy first, and then I'll give you the answer pi and puppy. Once you're ready for that, then you can do part C and part D. Because if you got pi and puppy wrong, then unfortunately, then you get part C and part D incorrect. I don't want to waste your time. So pause the video, have a go at pi and puppy. When you're ready for the answer, you can press play. So here are the answers for part A and part B. Part A, I'm not going to explain furthermore. So here's the answer. Part A, 2.5 sine theta minus 0.6435 must be 4 decimal places. Please, 4 decimal places. Read the question carefully. If you didn't see this, please go to this optician and get a new pair of glasses, please. B1, to find the maximum value, 2.5, and then it occurs, 2.21. Okay. So if you're happy with it, pause the video again. Have a go this time, part C, where it says Tom model. Start from there. Okay, pause the video. Have a go. When you're ready for the answer, you can press play. Right, here are the answers. So question C. First of all, rewrite the equation using answer in part A. So rewrite that 2 sine 4 pi t over 25 minus 1.5 cos 4 pi t over 25 into 2.5 sine theta, which is now 4 pi t over 25 minus 0.6435. Then I replace the highlighted part by 1, then to find the maximum. It occurs when the highlighted part equals 1, so I inverse sine of 1 power over 2 or negative 3 power over 2. I do negative because of the negative in here, so I'm thinking there might be a negative answer, possibly, but turns out my worry is a bit extra. You add, and then you add 0.6435 times by 25, divide by 4 pi, it's like making t a subject. You find 4.41 or negative 8.09. That's not required because t cannot be negative. Part D. So they've told you h equals 7. So you can relate this information 7 meters into h equals 7 because the 2 variables are h and t. You wouldn't find t. That means this information given to you by meters is h. So when h equals 7, I rewrite the whole equation, and then 7 bring the 6 over becomes 1 minus 6 or 1 divided by 2.5. And then I inverse sine or arc sine. As soon as I arc sine it, I do the cast diagram and find my 2 answers. At 0.6435 times 25, divide by 4 pi again, make t a subject. So here's cast diagram. And then I make t a subject, I get 2.1 or 6.71. But here comes the tricky part. If you got these 2 answers, 2.1, 6.71, you get 5 marks out of 6. What about the last mark? Because calculate to nearest minute. Nearest minute. Let me use purple. And what's t? T is the number of hours after midday. That means t is the time that start counting from 12 o'clock at noon. English, at noon. So you have to turn this into minutes. So 2 is 2 hours. 0.1 times 60 is 6 minutes. 6 hours. 0.71 times 60 is 43 minutes. So added to 12 o'clock is 1406 and 1843. Okay, so far I've not seen any students have made this correctly without my help from the beginning, altogether. Okay, so if you got it right from the first attempt, do let me know. All right, and that's the end of chapter 7, modeling. As I've said, this topic is exam heavy. Okay, you will see one question nearly every single year. Okay, and next lesson we'll be moving on to parametric equations.